On this video, I'm going to discuss the digestive system. I'm gonna break it down to you to the T, the anatomy and physiology of your digestive system. Cover to cover nga po. If you wanna know more about that, stay tuned. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Neil Gavin. I'm a registered nurse and I do have a degree in medical surgical nursing. I create my nursing educational videos to help nursing students and nursing professionals like you with their studies. If that is something that you are interested in, consider subscribing. If you're already a subscriber though, thank you so much for your love and support. I see you. I upload my nursing educational videos once a week. Don't miss that out. Subscribe now. Hit that notification bell so that you will be the very first to watch my newest uploads. Also, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and share with your friends because that will really help me know that you like to see more contents like this. Without further ado, nurses, let's jump into the video. Kumusta kayong lahat wherever you are right now, whatever time zone you're watching me right now? Good morning, good afternoon, and good night just in case I don't get to see you. Isang panibagong lecture week nga ang alay ko sa inyo for today and for this week. Yes po, nagbabalik ako sa isang panibagong anatomy and physiology discussion. Kagaya nga nung sinabi ko dun sa video, we are going to have a detailed, thorough discussion of your digestive system. Yes, it's like one chapter in one video. And I'm gonna make sure that at the end of this video, you will be able to understand the full anatomy and physiology of your digestive system. I will going to break it down to you from your mouth down there. Alam nyo na. Bago yon, gusto ko lang po magpasalamat sa lahat ng every week niyang bumabalik dito sa channel ko at patuloy na sumusuporta. Palago na nga tayo ng palago and nothing of that will happen if it wasn't because of you. Ngayon, kung hindi mo pa napapanood yung mga previous, yung last week's upload ko regarding, I think that was, what was that about? Pleural effusion. Regarding pleural effusion, ililink ko yung video na yon dito sa icon button dito. Kapag nagpapa-out yun, i-click mo lang yon. And kasama nung iba kong mga playlist sa medical surgical nursing. And please, if you're new to my channel, please do like. Pampabuenas ngayong 2022. Like, share, and subscribe ka na sa channel ko because every week nga po ako nag-a-upload. And one more thing, I would just like also to invite you who's watching right now to please join the Facebook page that I have. It's Neil Galve. I'll be also putting the link on the description box to the Facebook page. Join ka na kasi nagpo-post din po ako doon and I also would like to communicate or to connect with you guys. Post your thoughts and your comments there and also here on this video on my channel. And gusto ko lang kayo pasalamatan ulit sa lahat ng mga bagong sani, sa lahat ng mga bago nating subscribers. Welcome sa inyong lahat. I'll see you guys and I really do appreciate all the love and support from you. Now, without further ado, excited na ba kayo sa ating discussion? Yes. Let me switch back to my PC and I'll see you guys in a bit. Hi everybody, welcome back sa ating formal discussion ng iyong digestive system. This is another lecture material natin under sa anatomy and physiology and let this be your nursing study guide. Ngayon, kagaya ng sinabi ko sa intro kanina, kung hindi mo pa napapanood yung other anatomy and physiology discussion na create ko, medyo marami-rami na rin po sila. Ilalagay ko yung link doon sa description box or if you see the icon button na nag-pop out dyan, just click that one out kasi nandun yung actual playlist together with the other playlists that we have on my channel. Now, medyo mahaba itong discussion na to because I'm really gonna discuss to you anatomy and physiology of your digestive system to the T. So get yourself ready, have yourself, get your pen and paper because we're starting it now. Alright, so we have 3 objectives for our today's discussion. The first one, I'm going to give you the functions of your digestive system, anatomy of the digestive system, and of course, your physiology of the digestive system. So without further ado, nurses, let's jump into the actual discussion. First up, what is the functions of the digestive system? Now, here it is. So, first one is ingestion. So when you talk about ingestion, this means food must be placed into the mouth before it can be acted on.
Of course, hindi mo naman talaga magsisimula ang process yung digestive system kapag walang food intake, pag di mo nilagyan ng pagkain dyan. Now, this is an active voluntary process called ingestion. Next is propulsion. If foods are to be placed by more than one digestive organ, they must be propelled from one organ to the next. Swallowing is one of example of food movement that depends largely on the propulsive process called peristalsis. Nurses, naalala nyo pa ba yung process ng peristalsis natin? Peristalsis, you guys, is the involuntary alternating waves of contraction and relaxation of the muscles in the organ wall. Now, maidagdag ko lang sa process ng ating o yung functions ng ating digestive system. In general, the GI system have 6 functions, okay? The next one rather is food breakdown, mechanical digestion. Now, mechanical digestion prepares food for further degradation by enzymes by physically fragmenting the foods into smaller pieces. Now, sa food breakdown natin o yung mechanical digestion, dito napapasok yung ating enzymes. An example of mechanical digestions are mixing of food in the mouth by the tongue, churning of food into the stomach, and segmentation in the small intestine. Next one is your food breakdown, chemical digestion. Yung kanina, mechanical digestion, kasama dyan yung mouth and yung process ng mastication ba? But yung process ng chewing. Now is the food breakdown, chemical digestion na nga tayo. Sa enzyme maibalik ko lang, food breakdown, kasi sa mouth pa lang, mayroon na tayo dyang process ng digestion. Mamaya itatalakay natin yon. But dito sa food breakdown, chemical digestion, now we are talking about the sequence of steps in which the large food molecules are broken down into their building blocks by enzymes is called chemical digestion. Next one, you have your absorption. Transport of digestive end products from the lumen of the GI tract to the blood or lymph and absorption. And for absorption to happen, the digested foods must first enter the mucosal cells by active or passive transport process. Your last one is defecation, excretion na nga. Defecation is the elimination of indigestible residues from the GI tract via the anus in the form of feces. Mamaya, we're gonna talk about it further. Now, malinaw sa inyo yon, proceed na tayo sa anatomy of the digestive system. Eto na. Isa-isa simula sa bunganga. So, mouth nga po. Food enters the digestive tract through the mouth or oral cavity, a mucous membrane aligned cavity. Now, sa mouth mo, meron tayo dyang mga parts. Una na dyan is your lips. Your lips or labia protect its anterior opening. So, wag masyadong tinatawag din yung lips na labia. Hindi lang yun dun sa baba na mga kababaihan. Labia rin po ang tawag sa lips in a medical term. Cheeks. Yes, part ng cheeks. The cheeks form its lateral walls. You have your palate. The hard palate forms its anterior roof, and the soft palate forms its posterior roof. You also have in your mouth your uvula. The uvula is a fleshy finger-like projection of the soft palate, which extends inferiorly from the posterior edge of the soft palate. Uvula, ito, yung nasa gitna. Yung kapag nagagalaw, kapag nagtatang depression ka, when you're using tongue dep, tapos nagalaw yan, it can actually initiate gag reflex. Oh no! Itong nasa gitna. Vestibule, the space between the lips and the cheeks externally and the teeth and gums internally is the vestibule. Oral cavity proper. So meron tayong proper So the area contained by the teeth is the oral cavity proper. You also have in your mouth the tongue. The muscular tongue occupies the floor of the mouth and has several bony attachments. 2 of these are the hyoid bone and the styloid process of the skull. You also have your lingual frenulum. The lingual frenulum, you nurses, a fold of mucous membrane secures the tongue to the floor. Frenulum, this one. para hindi nakabuyang-yang yung dila. So ito yung frenulum, naka-hold siya sa floor papunta sa may tongue. Nandun siya sa back of the tongue. So secures the tongue to the floor of the mouth and limits its posterior movement. Last two is your palatine tonsils. At the posterior end of the oral cavity are paired masses of lymphatic tissue and palatine tonsils. These are your tonsils. Okay, now you have your lingual tonsil. Yes, the lingual tonsils cover the base of the tongue just beyond. Once again, these are the structures that can be located in your mouth. Proceed na tayo sa iyong pharynx. Okay, sa pharynx natin, dalawa lang naman yung major structure dyan. Now, let me define pharynx first. From the mouth, food passes posteriorly. So the way we're gonna have it is, you kind of like imagine the food entering the mouth. So tapos na tayo sa mouth, papunta na tayo, dadaan na yung food sa pharynx. So from the mouth, the food passes posteriorly into the pharynx and laryngopharynx. You have your oropharynx. Oropharynx is located posteriorly to the oral cavity. Laryngopharynx. The laryngopharynx is continuous with the esophagus below, both of which are common passageways of food, fluids, and air. Malinaw sa inyo yon? Malinaw. Now, pharynx, after pharynx, ang food pupunta sa esophagus. What is your esophagus? Esophagus or gullet runs from the pharynx through the diaphragm to the stomach. So mouth, pharynx, esophagus. Now let's talk about your esophagus more. In terms of size and function, your esophagus is about 25 centimeters and 10 inches long. It is essentially a passageway that conducts food by peristalsis to the stomach. So sa esophagus, meron na tayong peristaltic movement. It pushes the food down to the stomach. In terms of structure naman, ang esophagus mo, the walls of the alimentary canal organs from the esophagus to the large intestine are made up of the same four basic tissue layers or tunics. You have your mucosa. Or mucosa. Mucosa is the innermost layer, the moist membrane that lines the cavity or lumen of the organ. It consists primarily of the surface epithelium plus a small amount of connective tissue or tinatawag nating lamina propria and a scanty smooth muscle layer. Submucosa, nurses. Submucosa is found just beneath the mucosa. It is a soft connective tissue layer containing blood vessels, nerve endings, and lymph nodes, and also your lymphatic vessels. Now we have your muscularis externa. Wag malilito ha, this is just a brief description of your esophagus. Iniisa-isa natin siya in terms of these categories. The muscularis externa is a muscle layer typically made up of an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer of the smooth muscle cells. Serosa. The serosa is the outermost layer of the wall that consists of a single layer of flat serous fluid producing cells. The visceral peritoneum. So ano yung serous fluid production cells na yon na tinatawag? You call it your visceral peritoneum. Next, you have your intrinsic nerve plexus. When you talk about this one, your intrinsic nerve plexus, the alimentary canal wall contains two important intrinsic nerve plexus. Ano yung una? Submucosal nerve plexus and the myenteric nerve plexus, both of which are networks of nerve fibers. Yes, nerve fibers nga po ito to make to initiate or to facilitate to facilitate movement, peristaltic movement, and also sensation, both of which are networks of nerve fibers that are actually part of the autonomic nervous system and help regulate the mobility and secretory activity of the GI tract organs. Once again, these are the characteristics or the definition of your esophagus. Next, so mouth, pharynx, esophagus. Now we're down to stomach. Isipin nyo lagi yung passage ng way, the way we're gonna discuss passage ng way. Passage ng food from your mouth, pharynx, esophagus. Now we're down to the stomach. So yung food nasa stomach na. So let's talk about your stomach in detailed. So in terms of location, nurses, the C-shaped stomach is on the left side of the abdominal cavity, nearly hidden by the liver and the diaphragm. In terms of function, the stomach acts as a temporary storage tank for food as well as a site for food breakdown. Cardiac region. The cardiac region surrounds the cardioesophageal sphincter through which food enters the stomach from the esophagus. Fundus. The fundus is the expanded part of the stomach lateral to the cardiac region. The body of your stomach is the mid portion. Ito po, mid portion. So yung stomach mo may mga regions yan, may mga parts yan. Yung body ito, mid part. Now, the body of your stomach is a it's actually narrows inferiorly. It becomes a pyloric antrum. And then the funnel-shaped pylorus. Now we talk about pylorus. Pylorus is the terminal meaning end part of your stomach. And it is continuous with the small intestine through the pyloric sphincter or valve. So yung pylorus, yun yung nakakonect sa iyong small intestine, which is tatalakayin natin after this. Pero yung nagkoconnect sa kanila between the stomach and the small intestine is yung pyloric sphincter. Malinaw yon. Now, in terms of size naman, the stomach varies from 15 to 25 centimeters in length, but its diameter and volume depend on how much food it contains. When it is full, it can hold about 4 liters or 1 gallon of food, but when it's empty, it collapses inward on itself. In terms of rudge, the mucosa of the stomach is thrown into large folds called rudge when it is empty. Greater curvature. The convex lateral surface of the stomach is the greater curvature. Lesser curvature. The concave medial surface is the lesser curvature. Lesser omentum. The lesser omentum, a double layer of the peritoneum, extends from the liver to the greater curvature. Now we have your greater omentum. The greater omentum, another extension of the peritoneum, drapes downward and covers the abdominal organs like a lacy apron before attaching to the posterior body wall. It is riddled with fat, which helps to insulate, cushion, and protect the abdominal organ. You have your stomach mucosa. The stomach mucosa of the stomach is a simple columnar epithelium composed entirely of mucous cells that produce a protective layer of bicarbonate-rich alkaline mucus that clings to the stomach mucosa and protects the stomach wall from being damaged by acid and digestive by enzymes. Gastric glands. When you talk about gastric glands, this otherwise smooth lining is dotted with millions of deep gastric pits, which lead into gastric glands that secrete the solution called gastric juice. Ano yung nag-excrete ng gastric juice, which aids for food breakdown? It is your gastric glands. You have your intrinsic factor. Now, nurses, some stomach cells produce intrinsic factor, a substance needed for the absorption of vitamin B12 from the small intestine. You have your next, sheath cells. Naku, ang dami palang parts ng yung stomach ha. Makinig. The sheath cells produce protein digesting enzymes, mostly pepsinogens. So, sino yung nag-increase o nagre-release ng pepsinogen? It is your sheath cells. Next, parietal cells. Your parietal cells produce corrosive hydrochloric acid. So, sino ang nagpo-produce ng HCl? It is your parietal cells. Sino ang nagpo-produce ng iyong protein digestive enzyme, yung pepsinogens? Sheath cells, okay? Now, hydrochloric acid, in addition, this makes the stomach contents acidic and activates the enzymes. Next, you have your enteroendocrine cells. The enteroendocrine cells produce local hormones such as gastrin that are important to the digestive activities of the stomach. Last one, for your stomach, you have your chyme or chyme. After food has been processed, it resembles heavy cream and is called chyme. I don't know how you're going to pronounce it. Is it chyme or chyme? Let me know in the comment section below. But once again, these are the characteristics of your stomach or the medical definition of your stomach. Makinig, ini isa-isa ko talaga siya. So the small intestine, so tapos na tayo sa mouth, sa pharynx, sa esophagus, stomach. Nasaan na yung food? Nasa small intestine. Now the small intestine is the body's major digestive organ. Dito nangyayari lahat ng food breakdown, food absorption. Dito siya. Now we're gonna talk about this one in detail. Let's start with location. Saan nga ba ito matatagpuan? The small intestine is a muscular tube extending from the pyloric sphincter, naalala mo yon, to the large intestine. In terms of size, it is the longest section of the alimentary tube with an average length, nurses ha, of 2.5 to 7 meters, or in feet, that is 8 to 20 in a living person. Subdivisions. The small intestines has 3 subdivisions: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum, which contributes 5%, nearly 40%, and almost 60% of the small intestine, respectively. You also have your ileocecal valve. The ileum meets the large intestine at the ileocecal valve, which joins the large and small intestine. You have your hepatopancreatic ampulla. The main pancreatic and bile ducts join at the duodenum to form the flask-like hepatopancreatic ampulla, literally the liver pancreatic enlargement. You have your duodenal papilla. From there, the bile and pancreatic juice travels the duodenal papilla and enter the duodenum together. You have your microvilli. Microvilli are tiny projections of the plasma membrane of the mucosal cells that give the cell surface a fuzzy appearance, sometimes referred to as a brush border. The plasma membranes bear enzymes, or tinatawag nating brush border enzymes, that complete the digestion of the proteins and carbohydrates in the small intestine. Next, speaking of villi, you have your actual villi. Villi are finger-like projections of the mucosa that give it a velvety appearance and feel, much like the soft nap of a towel. So kapag naisip mo yung villi, ito yung parang tuwalya. Maliliit na mga brush-like appearance, yun siya. So you have your lacteal. Within each villus is a rich capillary bed and a modified lymphatic capillary called a lacteal. Circular folds. Circular folds, also called plicae circularis. Once again, that's plicae circularis, are deep folds of both mucosa and submucosal layers, and they do not disappear when food fills the small intestine. You have your Peyer's patches. This is the last one for your small intestine. Now, in contrast, local collections of lymphatic tissue found in the submucosa increase in number toward the end of the small intestine. Once again, these are the description of your small intestine. So, tapos na tayo sa small intestine. Nasaan na yung food? Nasa large intestine. Recap lang natin. Mouth. Yung food ha, ngunguya ako. Yung food nasa mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine. Now we are in large intestine. So you guys, pag sinabi mong large intestine, ano yung unang papasok sa utak mo? The large intestine is much larger in diameter than the small intestine, but shorter in length. Okay? Now in terms of size, about 1.5 meters or 5 feet long. That is the length. How long is your large intestine? So it extends from the ileocecal valve to the anus. Functions naman, ano kayang silbi nitong large intestine mo? Its major function, you guys, is to dry out indigestible food residue by absorbing water and eliminate these residues from the body as feces. So sa large intestine, ano lang to? Morely water absorption. Kasi major what's this? Food absorption and nutrients absorption is in the small intestine. In terms of subdivisions, it frames the small intestine on 3 sides and has the following subdivisions. Makinig ha, you have your cecum, appendix, colon, rectum, and anal canal. Okay? Now we're gonna talk about this one in detail. So what's the three sides of your or subdivisions of your large intestine? Ano yung sinabi ko kanina? Cesium. The sac-like cesium is the first part of the large intestine. You also have your appendix. Hanging from the cesium is the worm-like appendix, a potential trouble spot because it is an ideal location for bacteria to accumulate and multiply. Appendicitis, appendix, yun. Ascending colon. The ascending colon travels up the right side of the abdomen cavity and makes a turn to the right colic or your hepatic flexure to travel across the abdominal cavity. You have your transverse. Ascending, transverse. Malinaw yon, transverse. The ascending colon makes a turn. Pag nag-makes a turn, yun na yung papunta sa iyong transverse colon. Makes a turn and continues to be the transverse colon as it travels across the abdominal cavity. Next, transverse, you have your descending colon. Pababa na siya. Your descending colon then turns again and the left colic or splenic flexure and continues down to the left side as the descending colon. You have your sigmoid colon, sigmoid, this one. The intestine then enters the pelvis where it becomes the C or the S-shaped sigmoid colon. Kaya siya tinawag na sigmoid kasi doon sa itsura niya, sigmoid SS. You have your anal canal. Your anal canal ends at the anus which opens to the exterior. Next one, you have the external anal sphincter. The anal canal has an external voluntary sphincter. The external anal sphincter composed of skeletal muscle. Last one, you have your internal involuntary sphincter. The internal involuntary sphincter is formed by smooth muscles. Once again, these are the components of your large intestine. Now, we're gonna talk about your accessory digestive system. Actually, tapos na tayo sa main GI tract, dun sa main anatomy ng iyong of your GI system. These are your accessory digestive system. When we talk about your accessory digestive system or digestive organs, these are other than the intestine and the stomach. The following are also part of the digestive system because they are contributes to the absorption and digestion of food. Now we're gonna talk this one in detail. Handa na ba kayo? Nakakahinga pa ba? Nakakahinga? Medyo mahaba ito ha. Accessory organ mo ng yung GI system is yung teeth. The role of the teeth play in food processing needs little introduction. We masticate or chew by opening and closing our jaws and moving them from side to side while continuously using our tongue to move the food between our teeth. Now we're gonna talk about your teeth and function. Huwag ka mag-alala, hindi ko kayo gagawing dental nurse, okay? Pero we're gonna talk about this in detail. Diba para ka nagbukas ng libro pero naka-audio? Saya, diba? Now, function. The teeth tear and grind the food, breaking it down into smaller fragments. Deciduous teeth. The first set of teeth is the deciduous teeth, also called baby teeth or milk teeth sa mga baby. And they begin to erupt around 6 months. And a baby has a full set of 20 teeth by the age of 2 years. Permanent teeth. As the second set of teeth, the deeper permanent teeth enlarge and develop. The roots of the milk teeth are reabsorbed. And between the ages of 6 to 12 years, they loosen and fall out. Incisors. The chisel's shape. Incisors are adopted for cutting. Incisors cutting. Canines. Fung-like canines are for tearing and piercing. Premolars and molars. Premolars ay yung tinatawag nating bicuspids. And molars have broad crowns with round cusps or tips and are best suited for grinding. So your molars and your premolars, that is for grinding. You have your crown. The enamel-covered crown is the one exposed part of the tooth above the gingiva or gum. Enamel, narinig mo na to kapag pinag-uusapan ang ngipin. Enamel is the hardest substance in the body and is fairly brittle because it is heavily mineralized with calcium salts. Nakakahinga-hinga, hinga-hinga ha, hinga-hinga. You can pause this video and have a break and make yourself a coffee. But I'm gonna proceed. So root. The outer surface of the root is covered by a substance called cementum, which attaches the tooth to the periodontal membrane o yung ligament. Dentine. Dentine is a bone-like material underlies the enamel and forms the bulk of the tooth. You have your pulp cavity. Wag malilito, nasa teeth pa rin tayo ha. It surrounds a central pulp cavity, which contains a number of structures, connective tissue, blood vessels, and nerve fibers, collectively called the pulp. Last one, you have your root canal. Where the pulp cavity extends into the root, it becomes the root canal, which provides a route for blood vessels, nerves, and other pulp structures to enter the pulp cavity of the tooth. That is your root canal and your root cavity. Malinaw sa inyo yon? Malinaw. So, first accessory organ pa lang to yun ng iyong GI, ha? Now, you have your salivary glands. Nako, familiar tayo dito, nurses. 3 pairs of salivary glands empty their secretions into the mouth. Parotid glands. The large parotid glands lie anterior to the ears and empty their secretions into the mouth. Ito yung parotid glands mo, by the way. Now, you have your submandibular and sublingual glands. Submandibular and sublingual gland. Now, when you talk about these glands, the submandibular and sublingual glands empty their secretions into the floor of the mouth through tiny ducts. Saliva. The product of the salivary glands, saliva, is a mixture of mucus and serous fluids. You have your salivary amylase. The clear serous portion contains an enzyme. Di ba sinabi ko sa inyo kanina, sa mga palang may digestion na. Ito yon, salivary amylase, which is the clear serous portion contains an enzyme salivary amylase in a bicarbonate-rich juice that begins the process of starch. Starch nga po ang dinadigest sa ating mouth. Digestion in the mouth. Malinaw sa inyo yon? Malinaw. Next accessory organ, you have your pancreas. Ano nangyari dito? Pancreas, yung S nasa baba. Pero na-gets mo na yan. Now, only the process produces enzymes that break down all categories of digestive foods. In terms of location, your pancreas is a soft pink triangular gland that extends across the abdomen from the spleen to the duodenum. But most of the pancreas lies posterior to the parietal peritoneum, hence its location is referred to as retroperitoneal. In terms of pancreatic enzymes, yes, nagre-release nga po ng enzymes ang iyong pancreas. The pancreatic enzymes are secreted into the duodenum in an alkaline fluid that neutralizes, mind you guys, neutralizes the acidic chyme coming in from the stomach. Endocrine functions. The pancreas also has an endocrine function. It produces what? Your hormones, very important, insulin and glucagon, which is needed for regulation of your sugar level. Malinaw sa inyo ang pancreas. Next, we have your liver. Ang liver mo, parte siya ng accessory organs of your GI. The liver is the largest gland in the body. This is located under the diaphragm. More of the right side of the liver, right side liver, right, dun siya makikita, okay? It overlies and almost completely covers the stomach. Falciform ligaments. The liver has 4 lobes and is suspended from the diaphragm and abdominal wall by a delicate mesentery cord and falciform ligament. Now, anong function ng yung liver? The liver's digestive function is to produce bile. Bile, liver. So what is bile? Bile is a yellow to green watery solution containing bile salts, bile pigments, and cholesterol phospholipids in a variety of electrolytes. When you talk about your bile salts, bile does not contain enzyme, but its bile salts emulsify fats by physically breaking large fat globules into smaller ones, thus providing more surface area for the fat digesting enzyme to work on. So ang bile salts mo, it is the one who is helping the digestion of your fats. Malinaw sa inyo ang liver, ha? Malinaw. Now we have your gallbladder. Yung R na naman, nasa baba. While in the gallbladder, bile is concentrated by the removal of water. Saan nga ba matatagpuan ito? The gallbladder is a small, thin-walled green sac that snuggles in a shallow fossa and the inferior surface of the liver. Now, when you talk about your gallbladder, you're going to talk about your cystic duct. When food digestion is not occurring, the bile backs up the cystic duct and enters the gallbladder to be stored. So once again, this is your gallbladder. Now, naku, ang bilis nga ng ating discussion ha. Dito na tayo sa physiology of the digestive system. Specifically, the digestive system takes in food, ingest it, nurses, breaks it down physically and chemically into the nutrient molecules, tinatawag nating digest in, and absorbs the nutrients into the bloodstream. Then it rids the body of indigestible remains o yung defecation process. So, okay mag-alala, tatalakay natin siya in details. Medyo mabilis ba yung discussion? Sige, paulit-ulitin mo lang to. Promise ko sa'yo maririnig, ma-memorize mo. Now, in terms of physiology of your physiology of your GI, we're gonna discuss this in activities occurring in the mouth, pharynx, and esophagus. Okay? So, eto na. Now, food ingestion, and breakdown. Once food is placed in the mouth, both mechanical and chemical digestion begins. Yung process ng mastication, chewing, and then yung amylase mo, yun na yun. It started the process of digestion. Physical breakdown. First, the food is physically broken down into smaller pieces or smaller particles by chewing. Chemical breakdown. Then, as the food is mixed with saliva, salivary amylase begins the chemical digestion of starch, breaking it down into maltose. Stimulation of saliva. When food enters the mouth, much larger amounts of saliva pour out. However, the simple pressure of anything put into the mouth and chewed will also stimulate the release of your saliva. Passageway. The pharynx and the esophagus have no digestive function. They simply provide passageways to carry food to the next processing site, the stomach. Again, yung pharynx and yung esophagus, that's just a passageway that leads, para siyang tunnel or daanan, parang NCLEX, papunta doon sa tamang destinasyon kung saan nagkakaroon talaga ng actual processing of digestion. Malino sa yon, dito na tayo sa food propulsion, swallowing, and peristalsis. Physiology meaning function, ha? For food to be sent on its way to the mouth, it must first be swallowed. Pag-uusapan natin dito yung process ng deglutition. Okay? When you talk about your deglutition or swallowing, in layman's term, is a complex process that involves the coordinated activity of several structures. Ano yung mga structures na yon? Tongue, soft palate, pharynx, and your esophagus. Next, you have your buccal phase of deglutition. The first phase, the voluntary buccal phase, occurs in the mouth once the food has been chewed and well mixed with saliva. The bolus or food mass is forced into the pharynx by the tongue. Pharyngeal esophageal phase. The second phase, the involuntary pharyngeal esophageal phase transports food through the pharynx and the esophagus. Parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system controls this phase and promotes the mobility of the digestive organs from this point. Next, you have your food routes. All routes that the food may take except the desired route distal into the digestive tract are blocked off. The tongue blocks off the mouth, the soft palate closes off, and the nasal passages. The larynx rises to that its opening is covered by the flap-like epiglottis. Naalala mo pa sa epiglottis? Si epiglottis mo, siya yung parang covering para hindi dumaan doon, hindi pumasok sa trachea. Yung daanan ng hangin, 'di ba? Sa pharynx mo nandun yung makikita mong epiglottis. Yes. What's next? You have your stomach entrance. Once food reaches the distal end of the esophagus, it presses against the cardioesophageal sphincter, causing it to open, and food enters the stomach. Once again, this is the food propulsion, swallowing, and peristalsis. Pag-uusapan naman natin ngayon in terms of activities of the stomach. Kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, the activities of the stomach involve food breakdown and food propulsion. Now we're gonna talk about this one in detail. In terms of food breakdown, you guys. Now, let me give you a overview. Ano bang ibig ko sabihin when say food breakdown? The sight, smell, and taste of food stimulate parasympathetic nervous system reflexes, which increase the secretion of gastric juice by the stomach glands. Now, gastric juice secretion of the gastric juice is regulated by both neural and hormonal factors. Gastrin. The presence of food and a rising pH in the stomach stimulate the stomach cells to release the hormone gastrin, which prods the stomach glands to produce still more of the protein digesting enzymes, yung tinatawag nating pepsinogen, mucus, and hydrochloric acid. Ito na, ano ba yung pepsinogen? The extremely acidic environment that hydrochloric acid provides is necessary because it activates pepsinogen to pepsin, the active protein digesting enzyme. Active protein digestive enzyme, pepsinogen. Renin. Narinig nyo na ito, nurses? Yes. Renin, the second protein digesting enzyme produced by the stomach, works primarily on milk protein and converts it to a substance that looks like sour milk. Food entry. As food enters and fills the stomach, its wall begins to stretch at the same time as the gastric juices are being secreted. You're also going to talk about your stomach wall activation. Now, then the three muscle layers of the stomach wall become active. They compress the pommel, the food. They compress and pommel the food, breaking it apart physically, all the while continuously mixing the food while the enzyme containing gastric juice so that the semi-fluid chyme is formed. Once again, this is your food breakdown process. What about your food propulsion? Peristalsis is responsible for the movement of food towards the digestive site until the intestines. Now, ano-ano ba yung mga process na involved sa food propulsion mo? Una na dyan ang iyong peristalsis. Once the food has been well mixed, a rippling peristalsis begins in the upper half of the stomach, and the contractions increase in force as food approaches the pyloric valve. You have your pyloric passage. Pylorus of the stomach, which holds about 30 ml of chyme, acts like a meter that allows only liquids and very small particles to pass through the pyloric sphincter. And because the pyloric sphincter barely opens, each contraction of the stomach muscle squirts 3 ml or less of chyme into the small intestine. You also have there your enterogastric reflex. When the duodenum is filled with chyme and its wall is stretched, a nervous reflex, the enterogastric reflex occurs. This reflex puts the brakes on gastric activity and slows the emptying of the stomach by inhibiting the vagus nerves and tightening the pyloric sphincter, thus allowing time for intestinal processing to catch up. So once again, this is your food propulsion. The other topic that we're gonna discuss is activities of the small intestine. Ano ba yung mga nangyayari sa small intestine natin? Kasi na-discuss na natin yung kanina ano yung small intestine. 'Di ba, yung anatomy niya. Ngayon, physiology naman. The activities of the small intestine and food breakdown and absorption and food repulsion. Ito siya. Food breakdown nga po. So, food reaching the small intestine is only partially digested. Now, digestion, dito na nangyayari yung actual digestion mo sa iyong small intestine. Food reaching the small intestine is only partially digested. Carbohydrate and protein digestion has begun, but virtually no fats have been digested up to this point. Brush border enzymes. The microvilli of small intestine cells bears a few important enzymes. The so-called brush border enzymes that break down double sugars into simple sugars and complete protein digestion. Pancreatic juice. Foods entering the small intestines are literally deluged with enzyme-rich pancreatic juice ducted in from the pancreas, as well as bile from the liver. Pancreatic juice contains enzymes that, along with brush border enzymes, complete the digestion of starch. carry out about half of the protein digestion and are totally responsible for fat digestion and digestion of nucleic acid. Huhu, ang haba ng ano, Gia. Now we have your chyme stimulation. When chyme enters the small intestine, it stimulates the mucosa cells to produce several hormones. Two of these are secretin and cholecystokinin. Again, cholecystokinin, which influence the release of pancreatic juice and bile. Absorption of water and the end products of digestion occurs all along the length of the small intestine. Most substances are absorbed through the intestinal cell plasma membranes by the process of active transport. You have your diffusion. Huwag malilito ha, ito yung process ng food breakdown. Iniisa-isa ko lang sa inyo. Lipids or fats are absorbed passively by the process of diffusion. Debris. At the end of the ileum, all the remains are some water, indigestible food materials, and large amounts of bacteria. This debris enters the large intestine through the ileocecal valve. Malinaw ba sa inyo yung process ng food breakdown and absorption? Eto na siya. Next na tayo sa food propulsion. Palabas na. So, nasa na kaya yung food? Pag na sinabi mo yung food propulsion, nasa large intestine na. Now, peristalsis is the major means of propelling food through the digestive tract. Peristalsis, pag-usapan natin to. The net effect is that the food is moved through the small intestine in which the same way that toothpaste is squeezed from the tube. So kapag iniisip mo yung peristalsis, isipin mo lang kapag nagtutoothbrush ka, di ba pinupush mo yung, kumbaga hinahawakan mo, you're kind of like squeezing the actual tube of the toothpaste para lumabas yung actual content niya. So yun siya. Yun yung, I want you to think of peristaltic movement or peristalsis that way. Now, constrictions. Rhythmic segmental movement produce local constrictions of the intestine that mix the chyme with the digestive juices and help to propel food through the intestine. Once again, this is the process of your food propulsion. Ano naman yung activities of your large intestine? Yung kanina activities of your small intestine, now we're gonna talk about your large intestine. Ano yung mga activities niya? So sa activities na to pag-uusapan natin, yung food breakdown and absorption and defecation. Alright, so we have your food breakdown and absorption. What is finally delivered to the large intestine contains few nutrients. Few na lang. Kasi major absorption nga nangyayari sa small intestine. But that residue still has 12 to 24 hours more to spend there. Now, metabolism. The resident bacteria that live in its lumen metabolize some of the remaining nutrients, releasing gases. Yung gases na yun, methane, and hydrogen sulfate. Kaya anong content ng utot mo? Methane and hydrogen sulfate. Okay? Naipasok ko lang. That contribute to the odor of a feces. Flatus, about 50 ml of gas or flatus is produced each day, much more when certain carbohydrate-rich foods are eaten. Depende pa yung 50 ml na yun kung kumain ka lang talaga ng mga nakakapagpautot na mga pagkain. Absorption by the large intestine is limited to the absorption of vitamin K, some vitamin B, some B vitamins, some ions, and most of the remaining water. So ano-ano ulit yung absorption? So wag may isipin na wala namang process ng absorption sa large intestine. Na meron pa rin pero some na lang. So meron kang vitamin K, vitamin B, some ions, and most of the remaining is basically H2O, your water. Now we have your feces. Feces is the more or less solid product delivered to the rectum. Contains undigested food residues, mucus, millions of bacteria, and just enough water to allow their smooth passage. So feces kapag nasa rectum, pag nakalabas na, stool. Malinaw yon? Malinaw. Propulsion of the residue and defecation. Now, when presented with residue, the colon becomes mobile, but its contractions are sluggish or short-lived. We're going to talk about your hustral contractions. Ito, type ng contraction to. The movements most seen in the colon are hustral contractions, slow segmenting movements lasting about 1 minute that occur every 30 minutes or so. You have your propulsion. As the ostium fills with food residue, the distension stimulates its muscle to contract, which propels the luminal contents into the next ostium. Mass movements. Mass movements are long, slow moving, but powerful contractile waves that move over large areas of the colon 3 or 4 times daily and forces the contents towards the rectum. Now you have your rectum. Speaking of rectum, the rectum is generally empty, but when feces are forced into it by mass movements and its walls is stretched, the defecation reflex is initiated. Next, you have your defecation reflex. The defecation reflex is a spinal or sacral region reflex that causes the walls of the sigmoid colon and the rectum to contract and anal sphincters to relax. Contraction ng yung rectum and anal sphincter relaxation. Okay, now you have your impulses. As the feces is forced into the anal canal, messages reach the brain, giving us time to make a decision as to whether the external voluntary sphincter should remain open or be constricted to stop passage of feces. You have your relaxation. Within a few seconds, the reflex contraction and the anal rectal walls relax. With the next mass movement, the defecation reflex is initiated again. Hay nako nurses, tapos na nga tayo sa ating discussion ng iyong GI system na cover natin siya lahat in less than, ako ang haba ata nito, less than 50 minutes. But let me know, once again, thank you so much you guys for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more nursing educational videos. Let me know if you have other nursing topics that you want us to do. Comment it down below. Abangan nyo nga po yung next video natin next week, same time, same channel. Every 7 days na nga po ako nag-upload sa aking YouTube channel. Ito na rin ay pasasalamat ko sa inyo. Next video natin, I'm probably gonna post more about, I don't know. I have so many ideas, but I'm probably gonna post more about board exam type of questions kasi alam ko marami nagpe-prepare sa inyo. And also, dadagdagan natin yung content natin sa Foundation of Nursing and also sa Psychiatric Nursing. Gagawa tayo ng more lecture materials. Exciting, hindi ba? Yes. So, tulungan nyo na nga po kay pamalitan nyo na sa Radyong Sira ang pinakabago, ang pinaka-fresh at ang pinaka-libreng nursing review center sa balat ng YouTube. And I'll see you again next time.
Thank you so much you guys for watching. I hope you learned something, helping grow my channel. You already here, you might as well subscribe. Hashtag Team Kulto. Give this video a big thumbs up and share with your friends. Let me know what you guys think. You put them down on the comment section below. Also, don't forget to check out the other playlists I created for you. I'll be putting the links on the description box. Simply click this icon button right here. Let's connect. Follow me on all my other social media accounts. Everything is at Neil Galve except for my TikTok account, which is Neil Galve Official. I would also like to invite you to please join and follow my Facebook page. It's Neil Galve. The link is also going to be on the description box. I'll see you again next week.